So in this video, I wanted to cover 4 hard truths about dating the anxious preoccupied attachment style. And if you're not familiar with attachment styles, you can think of your attachment styles basically being your love style or the subconscious set of rules that you've learned about how to give and receive love with others and basically how to do relationships. And your attachment style applies not just to your romantic relationships, but actually shows up and affects you in your friendships, family relationships, even your workplace relationships. So, the anxious preoccupied partner is the partner in relationships that tends to sometimes feel anxious or clingy. They tend to fear abandonment. And this tends to spill into their relationships in a number of different potential ways. But it's also important to note that this is the result of just past trauma. And when we see our anxious preoccupied love style or attachment style in the first place, generally what you'll tend to see is that anxious preoccupieds tend to be very charming, charismatic, very thoughtful, very friendly, very kind to other people. They really prioritize their relationships. And when they're triggered, there are 4 hard truths to pay attention to. So, the first truth is that when an anxious preoccupied is triggered, they may accidentally violate somebody else's boundaries by accident. Let's say, for example, that an anxious partner is dating an avoidant partner. And that avoidant partner needs space in order to self soothe or in order to feel comfortable. They may withdraw and need that space to take a moment to be able to really process their feelings and understand what they need to proceed or to sort of progress out of that conflict. And we may see the anxious partner in that situation not be able to respect that person's need for space, not because the anxious preoccupied person doesn't want to, not because they don't care, but because when they are really triggered, they tend to have a little bit of this dynamic where they feel overwhelmed and they try to really hold on tight to that partner because they have this great deep fear of losing their partner or losing the person they love. So rather than being able to really see and understand that that person needs space for a minute, they may accidentally disrespect that boundary or violate that boundary, not consciously, not from a premeditated space, but because when they're so triggered, they're consumed with their own feelings. And sometimes that being consumed with their own feelings and fears of abandonment can lead them to accidentally violate other people's boundaries. Point number 2 is that sometimes anxious preoccupieds, when they're in that same triggered state, may not really see you or understand your needs. Again, think of when you're triggered as a person, if you're watching this. When you're triggered, we become more selfish, right? And we don't mean to become more selfish. We're not bad because we become that way. But actually, what's happening is when we're triggered, part of our processing is happening in more primitive regions of the brain. So, for example, a lot of triggered events highlight a lot of activity in the reptilian brain, where we tend to be the more primitive reptilian versions of ourselves. Our fight and flight centers are really lit up. And so we tend to have a lot of these more primitive patterns of behavior. And what you'll see as a result of that is whenever we are triggered, and this happens a lot for anxious preoccupieds, is when that fear of abandonment is online or that fear of being alone is online, they may do things that stop them from seeing how somebody else feels and stop them from empathizing with somebody else because they may lose sight of that person's perspective. An example of this could be if an anxious preoccupied person is dating somebody, and if they feel hurt by something and they're trying to express that, but somebody else feels hurt too, they may be, again, so overwhelmed with their own feelings that they can't really understand where you're coming from. And instead, they may become a little bit critical or harsh in their approach from time to time. Now, it's important to recognize that, if you are an anxious preoccupied, or if you're dating somebody who's anxious preoccupied, this person tends to show up differently at each different stage of a relationship. So when we're in the dating stage of relationships, and we're vetting somebody and we're getting to know them, we're going to show up very differently than if we're in the power struggle stage, for example, or if we're in the honeymoon stage. So there are 6 stages of all relationships. And if you want a roadmap for how an anxious preoccupied shows up in every single one of those stages, and also what you can work on, what challenges and pain points are going to happen in each area, so that you can use this roadmap to really improve your triggers, your painful dynamics, or your relationship as a whole. We actually have a 14-day free trial that you can use in the link in the description box below, that will give you access to that course. It's basically this really detailed roadmap, and it will give you major breakthroughs in the first hour or two of watching them in terms of how to address situations that are potentially holding you back in your relationships, how to make sure that you can elevate your relationships to the next level if you want more depth and more connection and more closeness. And if you're the partner of an AP, how to really understand them so you can also achieve those same outcomes. And again, it's free for 14 days. You can check it out for free. That is just for a limited time. We're just doing a 14-day promotion for this month because it's Valentine's Day month. So anyways, okay, so number three, hard truth number three is that anxious preoccupieds can really harbor a lot of resentment over time. This is because anxious preoccupieds, due to that fear of abandonment, may be stuck in this kind of chronic people pleasing mode where they will keep trying to get closer and people please. But really, they're leaving themselves out of the mix. Like every time we people please, we are not considering our own needs. We're kind of like, abandoning our own needs, if anything. And that can actually cause resentment when it happens for a prolonged period of time, where the more we people please, the more we'll actually tend to resent our partner. And that tends to be the way that it works. Think of people pleasing as being the breeding grounds for resentment, because we will eventually and inevitably not feel considered, not feel like we matter or like somebody's taking us into consideration. But part of that is that we have to also be able to communicate what it is that we need, get clear, and get really specific. And point number four, hard truth, is that anxious preoccupieds can really struggle with boundaries. And sometimes when they accidentally, don't speak up for their boundaries or, look out for themselves or have their own back, that can lead them to blame other people for not showing up for them or not being there for them in the way that they needed or violating a boundary by accident. And it's so important for anxious preoccupieds to realize that, you have a duty to yourself and your healing and your growth and your evolution to be able to understand your boundaries and feel safe setting boundaries in your personal life. Because until that happens, you'll often feel unprotected or unsafe around people and relationships over time, or really let down or really disappointed. And again, a lot of that comes from past trauma. And of course, people can just violate your boundaries no matter what. Don't get me wrong. There can be people who are just very unhealthy and don't care about boundaries. But because if we never communicate a boundary, it's going to fall on deaf ears. Like nobody's going to know. That's not the right expression, but nobody's going to know that we have one. Then we'll often feel really frustrated that people don't see us. And that can lead to criticism, lead to blame in relationships. Whereas you can take some of that power back by sharing, by communicating, by speaking up for yourself. And it won't just improve how you feel in your relationships, improve your self-esteem, but it will also improve the quality of the connection that you have with other people, because you'll feel truly seen and heard and known and respected. So I have some really exciting news, and it's that integrated attachment theory training is back. In other words, you can be trained to become a relationship coach certified in integrated attachment theory in literally 60 days. So who is this for? Well, of course, this is for any individual who wants to make an impact and really be of service to others while also obtaining freedom and flexibility and abundance in their lives. And this is also for anybody who's already a counselor, a therapist, a coach, and just really wants to expand their toolkit. We've had so many people enter into the integrated attachment theory program because they're just looking to obtain a certain degree of mastery in terms of understanding their own attachment patterns, and also the attachment patterns of maybe their children or partner or other loved ones in their lives, so they can really support those people and understand them more deeply. Now, please keep in mind that the last 2 times we ran this program, we filled up very fast. In fact, we oversold the programs and sold out completely. So if you're interested, click the link below to learn more and dive in with me. And I'd love to see you on the other side before seats run out. So I hope this makes sense. 4 important hard truths about dating these different attachment styles as part of this series. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying this content, these videos in general, please subscribe to this channel. I put literally daily content out for free. And I will hopefully see you in the next video.